I'm 92 years old, and I spent most of my life practicing one small habit that felt harmless, polite even. It cost me my marriage, my children's closeness, and the chance to be truly known. I'm sitting in the same armchair I bought in 1974, the leather cracked like old riverbeds. The house is quiet now, quieter than it should be. Some people say silence is peaceful. I used to believe that. But silence, I've learned, can also be a kind of grave. If you stay with me, I'll tell you about the habit I built, brick by brick, and how it slowly walled me off from everyone I loved. I was born in 1933 in a small town in Iowa where people waved from porches and knew your business before you did. My father, Henry, worked at the grain mill. My mother, Ruth, baked bread every Sunday morning. The smell of yeast and sugar used to wake me before the sun. In our house, there was a rule that wasn't written down. You didn't complain. You didn't make trouble. You smiled. You nodded. You kept going. When I was 7, I broke a window playing catch inside. My father looked at the shattered glass, then at me, and said nothing, not a word. He swept it up himself. That silence felt heavier than any scolding. I learned then, the worst thing you could do was make someone uncomfortable. So I grew up quiet. In school, I sat in the back. Teachers said I was easy. Girls said I was nice. Employers said I was reliable. All of it sounded like praise. None of it required me to say what I wanted. I met Sarah in 1953 at a church picnic. She had a laugh that came out like bells, and she wore a yellow dress with tiny blue flowers. When she asked me what I wanted to do with my life, I said, "Whatever makes sense." She laughed and said, "You're funny." I wasn't joking. We married in 1956. Our first apartment smelled like boiled cabbage and new paint. We had 2 plates, 3 forks, and a radio that only picked up one station. When Sarah wanted to move closer to her sister, I said, "Sure." When she wanted blue curtains, I said, "They're fine." When she asked what I wanted, I said, "I'm happy if you're happy." I believed that was love. At work, I was the man who stayed late, took on extra tasks, nodded through meetings. In 1968, when my supervisor took credit for my project, I felt my jaw tighten. I swallowed it. "It's not worth a fuss," I told myself. That phrase became my lullaby. We had our first child, Daniel, in 1962, and our daughter Lily in 1966. I remember the smell of baby powder and the sound of their breathing at night, like tiny waves. Sarah would ask me, "What do you think we should do?" And I would say, "Whatever you think is best." I thought I was being generous. What I was really doing was disappearing. The habit didn't announce itself. It never does. It just shows up every day asking to be fed. In 1978, I was offered a promotion. It meant more money, a bigger office, and travel. It also meant missing dinners, recitals, Saturday mornings. Sarah sat across from me at our kitchen table, the one with the nicked corner. The smell of coffee hung between us. She said, "I don't want you to take it." I looked at my hands. They were steady, too steady. "Why not?" I asked. "I already feel like I live with a ghost," she said. Her voice shook. "I don't want to raise them alone." I wanted to say I was scared, that I felt invisible at work, that I wanted to be seen, that I was tired of being nice. I wanted to say all of it. Instead, I said, "It'll be fine." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan. Each rotation felt like a question. I answered none of them. I took the promotion. The years after that blurred. Hotel rooms, conference halls, phone calls cut short. I'd come home with souvenirs, little snow globes, keychains. I thought they were proof of love. One evening, in 1985, Daniel was 16. He was sitting on the porch steps, head in his hands. I asked what was wrong. Nothing, he said. I sat beside him. The crickets were loud. You can tell me, I said. He waited. Then he said, You're never here. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the urge to smooth things over. I'm working for us, I said. That's not what I asked, he said. I could have asked more. I could have listened. I could have said, I'm sorry. Instead, I patted his shoulder and went inside. That was my habit. I didn't run. I didn't yell. I didn't drink. I just avoided discomfort, avoided truth, avoided myself. In 1992, Sarah asked me to come to counseling with her. I think we're losing each other, she said. I said, We're fine. She cried. I made tea. 2 years later, she packed a suitcase. I stood in the doorway watching her fold sweaters. Say something, she said. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I didn't know how to break my own silence. It felt like trying to breathe underwater. I hope you'll be happy, I said. She looked at me like I had slapped her. That was the last time she asked me for anything. The house was too big after Sarah left. Every room echoed. I filled the space with noise, television, radio, anything. Daniel moved out at 18. Lily followed 2 years later. They called on holidays, then less. I told myself they were busy. I told myself I had done my best. In 2004, I retired. They threw me a party at work. There was a cake with my name misspelled. People gave speeches about how dependable I was. I went home and sat at the kitchen table alone. The quiet felt different then. It wasn't peaceful. It was accusing. I tried dating. Women would ask, What do you want? And I'd say, I don't mind. They'd smile at first. Then they'd get tired. My doctor once asked if I felt lonely. I said, I manage. In 2011, I had a small stroke. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to scare me. Daniel visited. He stood at the foot of my bed, hands in his pockets. You okay? He asked. Fine, I said. He nodded. You always are. That night I dreamed of my father sweeping up glass. I woke up with my heart racing. It wasn't until Lily called me in 2017, crying that something cracked. Her marriage was falling apart. She asked if she could come over. When she arrived, she sat at the kitchen table, just like her mother had all those years ago. I don't know what to do, she said. I opened my mouth to say, It'll be fine. And then I stopped. My chest hurt. My hands shook. I don't know either, I said. She looked up, surprised. But I'm here, I said. Tell me everything. She did, for hours. When she left, I realized something. That was the first honest thing I'd said out loud in decades, and it terrified me, because honesty made me see what I had lost, not in big dramatic ways, but in 1,000 small avoidable moments, unasked questions, unspoken apologies, unshared fears. I started remembering things differently. The time Sarah had looked at me, waiting, the way Daniel had sat on the porch, the way Lily had asked me to see her. I hadn't been cruel, but I had been absent, even when I was there. Now I'm 92. My hands shake when I pour tea. I forget words sometimes. But I remember this. Avoidance feels like safety. It isn't. It's just a slower kind of loss. People think love is about never fighting, about keeping the peace. But peace without truth is just quiet resentment. I write letters now. To Sarah, who passed in 2020, to Daniel, to Lily. Some I send, some I don't. In them I say the things I never said. I was afraid. I didn't know how to speak. I thought silence was kindness. I was wrong. Last week Daniel called me. We talked about the weather, about his job. Then I said, I wish I had been braver with you. There was a long pause. Then he said, Me too, Dad. We're learning, slowly, late, but learning. If I could live again, I wouldn't be louder. I'd be truer. I'd ask more questions. I'd say, "That hurt." I'd say, "I need you." I'd say, "I love you," without wrapping it in politeness. Because time doesn't just pass. It piles up. And one day, you look back and realize you've been practicing something every day of your life. So choose carefully. If you're listening to this, you still have time. I don't have much. Call someone. Say the thing you've been avoiding. Not tomorrow, today. If this story stirred something in you, stay close to this channel. I'm not the only old fool with lessons to share.